Welcome to this episode of the Deliverance Network. And again, in this episode, we're going to share with you several experiences of the Virgin Mary. I'm going to highlight again my personal call to be this witness on the watchtower for you, especially in these times. And we're going to be sharing very, very important call, as it were, to form the part of the Ark of Mary and to follow Jesus Christ so that we really proceed in true safety with the times that are here and times coming in the days ahead. Well, I'm going to share with you two very interesting dreams from very early on in my spiritual journey from February the 6th, 2002. And I think that have a little bit of meaning that I wasn't aware of at the time based on what has occurred in the 18 years since these experiences. And the first one was a dream of my paternal grandmother, who I was very close to, that had passed away in 1999. And in the dream, I saw that she was in a shower and that she was being washed or cleansed, and she was lit up and glowing and sparkling almost psychedelically. Her skin was lit up and sparkling, and it was being changed. And so I ponder, of course, now that I know more in this profound spiritual journey, perhaps that cleansing of purgatory. I would hate to comment, but I wondered about the symbolism of that dream. And at the very end of the dream, I was saying to her, you know, is God happy with me? Am I pleasing Him with the things that I'm doing? Because I had definitely turned my path and converted and was working powerfully for God. And she said only one thing to me, and I remember it very, very well. She said that I was going to be called to a meeting. And I woke up. But in the second dream, later that evening, same evening, I dreamt that I was in a building and I was being called to a washroom, and it had on a door a very, very poignant symbol of a Catholic saint. And I knew that this was a bathroom that I was being called into that was for Catholic saints. And I don't say this to call attention or glory to myself at all. I want to point out we are all called to be saints for God. We just have to say our yes and choose God and pursue the spiritual path as best we can. But I knew that this was a bathroom I was entering for Catholic saints because of the emblem on the door, and I entered it. And as I did, I went up to a sink, was washing my hands, and a woman appeared next to me while I was washing my hands. And she started speaking to me, and she said, you realize that you have a very special gift. And she said, I must learn now how to develop it. And that's back in 2002. And I remember after she said that, I was led to this ramp to start going to a school, an upper ramp to go into school or tutoring or training of some kind. And I woke up as soon as I started climbing that ramp, and I remember thinking afterwards for many years, wow, this is the school of Mary, this is the school of the spiritual path, this is the trimming, this is the purgation on earth, and this is the decision for God, and also the decision to work for God in the salvation of souls. So I really pondered this dream afterwards as being called into the school of Mary, who absolutely is the fast track on the spiritual journey and who will lead you into safety into the arms of Jesus. Well, this dream experience is another one that kind of gave me a hint that I was going to be called in a special role to kind of be one who was on the watchtower and giving special announcements and information to people. But I, of course, had no real clue what my role was going to be back when I had this dream in 2005, and it's from June the 20th, 2005. I was just shown that I was part of a production or play that was being put on in this stage, and of course we're on the world stage. And I was shown that, you know, the dress rehearsal is done, but it's time for the final production. And now when I see the times that we've entered into, these times of revelation, not the end of the world, but the end times, many people refer to it, that I had lines to read and things that I was to speak. And I was given a title called the Newspaper Girl. or the announcer. Announcing the good news, of course, is what I have been doing for quite some time now. And I was shown that it was going to be this time of the frog, and I know that there's biblical symbolism tied to that. And I started doing my work of announcing, but I remember at partway through feeling like, well, I don't know, the things I'm going to be asked to speak, and will I be able to recite my lines properly? And I was reassured by the storyboard master that all was proceeding as planned. Maybe a slight hiccup or delay. I was also shown there were a lot of people with various roles for this production time, this stage production, the final production. So I'm not the only one. Of course, I've spoken of that before. There's a lot of us on the Watchtower who have been given lines and messages and important information and exhortations to pass along to the world to keep everyone as informed as possible what we're hearing from heaven, and very, very credible witnesses out there. So I just wanted to add this to the testimony, and from 2005 that I've been called forward to be this announcer, this newspaper girl, to bring news as part of this final production. And of course, this is going to play out according to God's plan. That's the other thing I want to mention, is that God's plan is perfect, and He is allowing everything that is occurring for a purpose. And we who are on God's side just have to simply follow Mary, follow Jesus, follow the promptings of the Holy Spirit, stay close to the magisterium in our faith, and do not waver from our position no matter what unfolds in the church or in the world. Well, I'm going to share an experience with you. I can't say dream, vision, from December the 2nd, 2007, which happened to be the first Sunday in Advent that year. And this was a flash image vision of Mary, the Virgin Mother Mary. And she sat in this image almost as if she was in repose, and she seemed to be wearing like sackcloth material, like a heavier, rougher garment. And she was seated and slumped, almost as if she had been standing for a long time, but now finally just slumped in repose. And her head was tilted to one side, and I know it was tilted to the right, and it slightly downward, and her eyes were closed. So a very, very detailed image of the Virgin Mary. And her eyes were closed, but the most odd thing about this vision of Mary was that plastered to her forehead was a small brown wooden cross, and on that cross hung her son Jesus in death. And she was not crying in this vision of Mary, but she looked resigned and accepting, but very, very somber. And I share that with you because Mary, our mother, through many apparitions and many messages throughout the world over many, many years now, has been standing and calling and pleading and begging for us to turn to the faith, to turn to her son Jesus, to pray, 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 and has been doing so with regularity, with consistency, with greater and greater urgency as the years have gone on. And as we have heard through many visionaries, many of her pleas have gone unheeded. Not enough of us have been listening. And of course, I had turned and accepted Mary's call back in 1999. So been on the Watchtower asking other people to join in the battle and to consecrate themselves to Mary, to choose Jesus and to choose the faith for many years now, because it's very, very important. But I sense we have come into a time where Mary's role, she's calling us, but she's also now having to accept that some people have not chosen Jesus, and some people are going to be facing more difficulty because they have not stepped into that ark of safety, which is the Immaculate Heart of Mary, which is, of course, in union with God and our faith. So I'm really, again, likening Mary to this protective, perfect, really, mother who is an advocate for us. They call her the mediatrix of all graces, who is one of the closest human beings to Jesus that ever was or ever will be, because she gave birth to him and she is his mother. And so Mary, mediatrix of all graces, advocate, and wonderful, wonderful mother of ours, has been calling us all to safety for some time, but unfortunately many are not listening. I'm going to share with you a very, very long, detailed, vivid dream of Mary, the Mother of God, and it was actually from the feast of Christ the King, November the 21st, 2010, and I'll try to summarize it for you so I don't make it too lengthy. But I dreamt that I came out into the street and I was coming with others as they were coming out of their homes silently to come, because something was coming. And it was nighttime, it was dark, and of course I liken that to the fact that we've entered night now. The proverbial clock has struck midnight and we are in the dark night, as it were, in the world, in very, very difficult times. And so I knew that others were coming with me and we were being called into the street. And it was then that I saw Mary, the Mother of God, most holy. And she was dressed in a plain robe, which wasn't the focal point though. It was not a flowing robe, it was a traveling robe. And she was walking in the streets with a traveling robe and a cloak over top. And her head was tied up in like a tight bun, and she was basically in traveling clothes. She walked very silently and swiftly, and she was coming to gather her children and take them away. And we all started to come into the streets and join her. And I can't say if this is something that's going to be happening in a more prominent way in the future, tangibly, or if this is a spiritual symbolism of being called into the safety, the Ark of Mary. But she was calling us, and we were, as we were, it was likened to the spiritual journey, we were called in spirit, and we were with Mary in spirit, and the joy and the boundlessness of that spirit as we were with Mary was absolutely wonderful and overwhelming. And as we walked with her under the dark of night, I knew Jesus was with her. I could not see him in this experience as I have in many others, but I knew that he was with her and walked with her, and therefore with us. And she was gathering us because something was coming from dangerous was coming towards us. So of course we're in very, very difficult times right now. And she had a gentle sigh of resignation as to the people that would not be able to come with us, who were not choosing to come out into the streets and walk with her and with Jesus. But she knew that they have to make their choice, and that perhaps those who weren't pursuing the spiritual path would have to be cleansed in purgatory. This was also part of this dream experience. So we neared the edge of the city, and there was a tall gate that we went over, and we were in the spirit then, and I can't even tell you the lightness that I had. And Mary walked as she did thus with angels, and they had keys to unlock the gate and take us through. So very, 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 very dynamic symbolism there, biblical symbolism. But just before I turned thus, I turned back and I saw what Mary had seen and knew was coming, and that was people with machine guns, bandanas, almost like militia, and they were coming and starting to corral people into a control type state. And so I know that Mary was calling us to safety somehow to avoid that which is coming. And so I will be sharing with you in future some of the more difficult things God has shown me, which I believe are tied to the times which we are finding are now suddenly upon us. But all I have to say is that when she brought me and we came thus, I was brought into these big doors. I can't say it was heaven, but I was brought into the vestibule by Mary, and I was shown my staircase to the right as I entered the vestibule, and with huge ornate doors beside me. And on that staircase to the right, I turned, and Mary said to me that on the stairs were rolled up towels. And she said, these are all the gifts that you have given me, over your lifetime. And the lower ones were rougher, coarser, thicker towels rolled up, but as you got closer to the top, farther in the staircase, they were more fine and delicate, iridescent, beautifully embroidered. And she said, I love all these gifts, but these, gesturing to the ones at the top, are the ones that I really treasure the most. So she was showing me all the gifts I had given her in my lifetime and what she treasures most. And that is the finer gifts of the Spirit and the finer walk in the spiritual call. And we are all called to do that alongside Mary, our mother. To find out more about these experiences and the writings that I have centered around them, please visit the Deliverance Network at www.deliverancenetwork.com. And if you're interested in our women's group Sisterhood, please check out www.sisterhood.live.